I hadn't been back to the river in years, not since I was a kid, chasing fireflies and skipping stones until the sun dipped behind the hills. Tonight, though, something pulled me here. Maybe it was the loneliness, maybe it was the memories. Either way, I found myself walking the old trail at twilight, the gravel crunching underfoot, the air thick with that damp, earthy smell that always came after a warm day. The sky was melting from gold to a bruised purple when I saw it again. The willow, just like I remembered, stooped at the water's edge like an old mourner. Its long, stringy branches dipped into the surface and swayed slightly, though there was no wind. I slowed down. The tree always made me uneasy as a child, though I could never explain why. We used to dare each other to touch its bark and run. I think I even remember someone saying it whispered at dusk, but I can't remember who told me that. Probably just one of those playground stories meant to give us goosebumps. Still, I hesitated a second before stepping onto the weathered wooden dock nearby. It creaked under my weight as I sat and dangled my legs over the edge. The lake was quiet, eerily so. No frogs, no birds, just the occasional plop of something beneath the surface and the buzz of dragonflies skating through the air. For a while, I just watched the last color bleed from the sky. It was peaceful, almost enough to make me forget the strange feeling creeping up my spine. Almost. Then I heard it. A soft sound, delicate, like someone sobbing from far away. I turned, scanning the shore. The path was empty. The only thing behind me was the willow, standing still. I waited. Nothing. Just silence and the rhythmic lap of water. But then it came again, louder, closer, crying. "Hello?" I called out, my voice thinner than I'd intended. It felt swallowed by the air. I stood, heart tapping an anxious rhythm against my ribs, and stared at the willow. That's when I saw her. A little girl. Kneeling beneath the tree, half hidden in its curtain of hanging branches. Her dress was white, soaked through, clinging to her small frame. Her long hair hung wet and limp. She didn't move, didn't speak, just stayed there, head bowed. I stepped off the dock slowly, my shoes crunching on the gravel path. "Are you okay?" I asked. She didn't react. A breeze tickled the back of my neck. No, not a breeze. A whisper. "Nathan." It was my name, spoken as soft as breath. I spun around, but no one was there. When I turned back, she was looking at me. Eyes wide, pale, empty. I froze. She stood then, so quietly it was like the ground didn't feel her weight. In one small hand, she held something. An old silver locket, tarnished and glinting faintly in the low light. Slowly, she stretched her arm toward me, offering it. I don't know why I took it. My instinct screamed at me not to. But my hand moved on its own, and the cold metal settled into my palm. As soon as I touched it, her lips parted. "Thank you," she whispered. That was all. Then she turned, walked slowly to the edge of the dock. The sound of her footsteps didn't echo. I followed, transfixed. My eyes never left her. She knelt again at the water's edge, touched the surface with one finger, and vanished. Just like that. Gone. Only the ripples remained, stretching across the lake in perfect circles. I stood there in silence, locket still in my hand. My fingers clenched so tight they'd gone numb. It wasn't cold anymore. It was warm. Back at my car, I slipped it into my pocket without thinking. I looked back once. The willow stood in silhouette, its branches unnaturally still. The wind had finally picked up, or maybe it hadn't. But I swear, just before I closed the door, I heard it again. A child's voice, calling my name, carried off by the river breeze. She didn't move when I called to her. Just sat there beneath the curtain of willow branches, her soaked white dress clinging to her like it had never dried. Her head hung low, hair stringy and wet, plastered to the sides of her face. She should have been shivering, but she was still as stone. From where I stood on the dock, the air between us felt wrong, heavy and still, like the quiet before a summer storm. "Hey," I called again, my voice thinner this time. Are you okay?" She didn't answer. Instead, she lifted her face just enough for me to see her eyes, wide, pale, and lifeless. I felt a rush of cold crawl up my back, like someone had just run a block of ice down my spine. Something in the pit of my stomach twisted. Her gaze locked with mine, but it wasn't the look of someone asking for help. It was a look that had seen too much, a look too old to be on the face of a child. Then I heard it again. My name. Nathan. But this time it was closer, no longer drifting on the breeze. It was whispered right beside my ear. I flinched and spun around. Nothing. Just empty lake and forest shadows pressing in. When I turned back, she was standing. Same spot, but now upright, hands at her sides. And in one of them, I noticed, was something dangling from her fingers. Something that glinted faintly in the low moonlight. A locket. She stepped forward, just one slow, deliberate step, and held it out. Her hand trembled slightly, but her expression remained unreadable, like she was staring through me. I took a cautious step forward, every part of me screaming to leave, to run, to pretend I hadn't seen any of this. But something in her eyes, something ancient and sorrowful, held me in place. I reached out. As my fingers closed around the locket, a strange warmth passed through me. It wasn't metal cold. It was warm, almost pulsing. Inside was a tiny water-stained portrait. A boy no older than 8 or 9. Dark hair, faint smile. I didn't recognize him, but something about the picture felt old. Older than the photograph should have been. The metal around it was tarnished, worn by time and weather and grief. Her eyes glistened when I looked back up. "Thank you," she said. It was a whisper, barely carried across the still air, but it cut straight through me. Her voice didn't sound like a child's. It sounded layered, echoed, like more than one voice speaking the same words at once. I wanted to ask who the boy was. I wanted to ask her name. But before I could speak, she turned and began to walk. Not toward the path or away from the water, but to the edge of the dock. Her bare feet didn't make a sound on the old wood. I followed, unsure why. Maybe I was afraid to let her out of my sight. Maybe I thought she would vanish if I blinked again. She stopped at the very edge, where the dock met the tangled roots of the willow. The water was calm. Too calm. Like glass stretched tight across a bottomless depth. She knelt. One finger reached down, touched the surface, and with a soft splash, she was gone. No ripples, no flailing. Just gone. I stared at the spot where she'd been. My breath caught in my throat. I knelt down, reached a hand toward the water, but it was empty. No sign of her. No air bubbles, no movement beneath. Just silence. The locket in my hand snapped shut on its own. I jumped, startled. The click was sharp, too sharp in the stillness. It was still warm. I backed away, stumbled down the dock, and didn't stop until I reached the path. My mind raced, grasping for logic. Maybe I'd fallen asleep. Maybe I imagined it all. But as I reached my car, I slid the locket into my jacket pocket and felt its weight like an anchor. I glanced back. The willow stood motionless, a black silhouette against a sky now drained of color. The lake was still. The dock was still there. But the space beneath the willow looked darker now, deeper. As I opened my car door, I heard it one last time. Faint. Software carried by the wind that wasn't blowing. Nathan. I drove home with the locket pressing against my chest like it belonged there. Like I'd been meant to find it. But I didn't sleep that night. Not after what I saw in the mirror. Not after I noticed my reflection wasn't blinking. I barely remembered the drive home. My mind was still back at the lake, under that weeping willow, watching a girl vanish like smoke into water. The locket she gave me sat heavy in my pocket, impossibly warm. I should have left it there. I should have left everything there. But I didn't. At home, I sat in the kitchen and laid the locket on the table, half expecting it to be gone or changed. But there it was, tarnished silver, worn by time. I reached for it. The moment my fingers touched the metal, a shudder went through me. It pulsed, slow, faint, like a heartbeat. It wasn't supposed to feel alive. I tried to open it again, to see the boy's face once more, but the clasp wouldn't budge. It was sealed shut now. I ran it under hot water, pried at it with a knife. Nothing. It was as if it had never been opened at all. That night, I barely slept. The dreams came in waves, disjointed, wet, suffocating. I was back at the lake. The dock was longer, stretching endlessly into black water. The willow's branches reached for me, curling like fingers around my limbs, pulling me under. I couldn't scream. I couldn't breathe. Beneath the surface, pale hands brushed against mine. Dozens of them. Eyes opened in the dark, wide and unblinking, watching me sink. I woke gasping, tangled in sweat-soaked sheets. The room was dark and too quiet. My breath caught when I saw the locket, still on the nightstand, still sealed, still warm. By mid-morning, I knew I couldn't ignore it. I had to go back. It was stupid, irrational. But there was something in me that wouldn't rest. Something that kept whispering. She wasn't finished. At the diner near the lake, I nursed a bitter cup of coffee and asked the waitress if she'd heard any stories about the Willow. She just gave me a quick glance and said, "Don't linger there after sunset." It was the way she said it, so casually, like someone repeating an old rule they didn't dare question. I asked why. "Some say they hear crying. Some say they don't come back," she said. Then she added, with a look that didn't quite reach her eyes, "But I don't believe in ghost stories." I left a few bucks on the counter and stepped outside, but not before an old man near the window called after me. "You headed to the water?" he rasped, voice like gravel and cigarettes. I nodded. His eyes narrowed. "There was a boy once," he said. "Disappeared near that tree. My brother's age, early 70s. They never found him. Only thing left was his shoes, and a little silver locket." I froze. He chuckled without humor. "Some folks think the tree keeps what it wants, that it remembers. I say, whatever's there, it's older than the river." I didn't ask for more. I didn't want more. I just left. By evening, I was back on the path. The trees thinned around me as I neared the water, and there it was again. The willow, hunched and heavy, its branches like arms drawn low in mourning. The sun was dipping fast. Shadows stretched long and thin across the grass. I stood at the edge of the dock, the same spot I'd sat the night before. The water was perfectly still, and I waited. The locket in my pocket grew warmer, as if sensing the place. I watched the willow sway, though there was no wind. Something about the silence was deeper this time, more oppressive. The world around me felt like it was holding its breath. That's when I heard it. A whisper. Not a voice, not exactly. More like a hum of something ancient, something low and buried. It felt like the earth itself was trying to speak through the roots. I took one step forward. The dock groaned beneath me, and I swear I felt the tree lean closer. I should have run. I should have left that cursed locket right there on the planks and never looked back. But I didn't, because in that silence, in that whisper, I felt something else too. Something I couldn't understand yet. The tree was waiting for me, and it wasn't alone. I told myself it was the last time. Just one more visit. I'd go during daylight, sit by the river, watch the water, and leave before dark. No whispers, no crying, no willow. But the sun had already begun to dip when I parked by the path again. I don't know what I was looking for. Maybe answers, maybe closure, maybe her. The river looked the same, still, glassy, too perfect. That unnatural calm that didn't belong in nature. I walked to the dock, the same planks groaning beneath my steps, and sat with the locket heavy in my pocket. It hadn't opened again since that night, no matter how I tried. but it still radiated that soft warmth, like something alive slept inside. I stared at the water. The sky above had started bleeding orange again, casting the river in golden ripples. I watched my reflection. It stared back, calm and dull-eyed, just like me. Then it blinked. But I didn't. I flinched and looked down again. My reflection matched my every move now, too perfectly. I tried to laugh it off. Just my mind playing tricks. Just the lighting. But I couldn't shake the chill that crept down my neck. I scanned the shoreline. The willow still stood in its place, more like a figure than a tree in the dusk light. That feeling came back, like I was being watched, like I wasn't alone. Then I saw her, kneeling again, half hidden in the willow's curtain of green. Same soaked white dress, same unmoving form. I stood slowly. "What do you want from me?" I asked. She didn't answer. She lifted her face this time, her eyes catching the last rays of sunlight, and I swear, they looked more human than before. Sad, frightened, like she was trapped inside herself. She moved her lips. No sound came out, but I could see it. A word, maybe two. Her mouth forming something fragile, something desperate. I stepped off the dock, walking slowly toward the willow. But as I reached the edge, the wind picked up. Except it wasn't wind. It was breath. Close. Cold. Whispering. I looked back. She was gone. The spot where she'd been was empty. Only the willow moved now, its branches swaying unnaturally without a breeze. I turned back to the dock and froze. Tiny, wet footprints marked the wood, each one leading away from the edge, up the dock, toward where I'd been sitting. I followed them with my eyes. They stopped right where my feet now stood. The locket in my pocket shifted. I pulled it out. It was open, no longer sealed, no longer jammed shut by time and rust. Inside, two portraits stared up at me. One was the same boy as before, faded, water-damaged, forever young. The other was me. Not a photograph I'd ever taken, but unmistakably me. Pale, expressionless. My eyes looked different, though, like someone else was behind them. I stumbled backward. My legs felt weak, my pulse hammering in my ears. I don't know how long I stood there, just staring, trying to understand what I was seeing. The sun dipped below the trees, shadows spilling across the dock. And then I heard it again. A whisper. Not from the willow this time, not from the wind. It came from the water, beneath the dock, beneath my feet. A low voice, soft and ancient, murmuring my name. I backed away. The locket snapped shut on its own. Click. I nearly dropped it. I ran. Didn't stop until I reached my car. Didn't look back. Couldn't. But in the rearview mirror, just for a split second, I saw her again. Not standing, not kneeling. Reflected. Floating just behind me. Her eyes wide. Her mouth open in a silent scream. Then she was gone. And the locket, in my shaking hand, was warm as ever. I stopped pretending I wasn't obsessed. Every morning, I told myself I wouldn't go back to the river. And every night, I found myself on that same path, the sky dimming above, the willow growing taller in the shadows. I couldn't explain it. Not to myself, not to anyone. The locket never left my pocket, and each time I touched it, it pulsed like it had something to say. I started researching. Newspapers, archives, library microfilm. The further I dug, the more impossible it all became. Children. Always children. One in 1952, another in 74, a third in the late 90s. Every account eerily similar. Last seen near the river, near the willow. Dusk. Water calm. Disappearance sudden. No bodies ever found. Only belongings left behind. Shoes, hair ribbons, small things, intimate things. In one case, a silver locket. I sat in the back of the library, hand shaking as I held the old clipping. Black and white photo of a boy no older than 8. It was him. The one in the locket. the one whose face had been next to mine. I left the library before the lights flickered. That night in my apartment, I heard them again. Footsteps. Wet, dragging steps across the floorboards. I gripped the sheets, eyes wide in the dark, heart galloping in my chest. I didn't move. The sound stopped by my bedroom door. When I finally got up the nerve to check, the hallway was empty. But the wooden floor there, it was wet. Small footprints led away, fading. That wasn't the worst of it. In the kitchen window, where only the dark street should have looked back at me, I saw her, the girl in the white dress, staring at me through the glass. Her eyes were bottomless, her hair clung to her face. She didn't move, didn't blink. I turned on every light in the apartment. She was gone. But in every reflective surface afterward, my bathroom mirror, my tea kettle, even the puddle outside my building, I saw something. Her. Always just behind me, watching. I went back to the dock the next day. Of course I did. I got there before the sun set this time. I sat with the locket in my palm, the metal searing now, almost burning. I didn't care. I stared at the Willow, waiting. For her. For him. For answers. The tree was closer. It had moved again. Not by much, but I would have sworn it. Closer to the dock, closer to the water. Its roots tangled like fingers clawing toward the lake. Its branches sagged heavier, lower, like it was listening. I stood, took a few slow steps forward. The sun was down now, light draining out of the sky like a dying breath. "Why me?" I asked aloud. "What do you want?" No reply. Just silence so deep it rang in my ears. Then, a ripple on the lake, and then another. I turned slowly, and on the glassy water's surface, I saw them. Children. Dozens of them. Their shapes faint but visible, just beneath the surface. Unmoving, eyes open, staring straight up, watching me. My legs locked. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't scream. One of them looked like the boy from the Locket. One of them looked like me. The water stilled again. Behind me, the willow rustled, though there was no wind. I turned around. The girl stood at the edge of the dock, but not alone. Another figure now stood beside her, barefoot, soaked, smaller than I expected. A young boy. He didn't look scared. They both pointed. At the water. Then they were gone. The dock groaned beneath me like something was shifting underneath. I stumbled back and ran, didn't stop until I reached the gravel road. The locket in my hand wouldn't open anymore, but I didn't need to see inside. I already knew what was waiting there. I don't remember deciding to dig. I don't remember grabbing the shovel from my shed or driving back down the gravel road with the locket in my fist. I just remember standing beneath the willow, the shovel in one hand, the dirt cold and soft beneath my boots. The sun hadn't even fully set yet, but the shadows under that tree were already darker than they should have been, thicker, like the light didn't want to be there. I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe proof that it wasn't all in my head. Maybe bones. Maybe nothing. But I found something. It didn't take long. The earth gave way too easily, like it wanted me to see what was hidden. Just a few inches down, I struck something hard. Not rock, not wood. Something dull and hollow sounding. I dropped to my knees and clawed at the dirt with bare hands. And then I saw it. Fabric, tattered and rotting, tangled in roots. And bone. Small bones. A child. I fell back, stomach turning, heart racing. My vision swam, but I couldn't stop. I dug more. There was more. A second bundle. A third. Pieces of cloth, faded blue and pink, broken toys, a muddy sandal. And nestled deep among the roots, as if the tree had grown around it, was a silver shape dulled by years underground. Another locket. I pulled it free. It was identical to mine. Same delicate engravings. Same strange warmth, though it had been buried for who knows how long. The whispering started then. It wasn't like before, not a single voice in the breeze or the cry of one child. This was a chorus, dozens, low, indistinct, surrounding me in every direction. I froze, the locket in my hand trembling. They were calling. Not just Nathan, but others. Names I didn't recognize, names I'd never heard before. A roll call of the forgotten. And the girl, she was there again. I didn't see her arrive. She was just suddenly there, standing across from me on the other side of the shallow grave. Her dress was darker now, stained with soil and water. Her skin seemed paler, her eyes wider. And this time, she wasn't alone. The boy from the locket stood behind her, and behind him, others. Half-seen shapes, children, some holding hands, some barefoot, all still, all watching me. She raised one hand, slowly, deliberately, and pointed toward the water. I turned. The lake, mirror still, had changed. Shapes floated just below the surface. Faces, eyes open, unblinking. Their mouths moved, but no sound came out. They weren't swimming. They weren't sinking. Just watching. I turned back to the girl. She stepped forward. Not threatening, not angry, just sad. The locket I had dug up opened in my palm on its own. Two portraits stared up at me again. One was the same boy. The other was unfamiliar this time. Not me, not yet. A boy I didn't recognize, but he looked afraid, lost. I looked to the girl. She shook her head slowly, like a warning, and then the whispering shifted. No longer names, just one word, spoken in 100 voices. Bound. I dropped both lockets. The whispers stopped. The air went still. When I looked up, they were gone. All of them. The girl, the boy, the children. The willow loomed, silent as death, roots half exposed and trembling slightly, like something just beneath was breathing. I stumbled backward, leaving the lockets behind, and ran. All the way to my car, all the way home. But even in the safety of my living room, with lights on and every door locked, I could still hear it. Faint, deep, from the earth below. Calling my name again. And I knew. I wasn't meant to leave. Not yet. I didn't want to go. I told myself I wouldn't. I locked the locket in a drawer. I left my apartment, stayed with a friend, turned off my phone. But it didn't matter. That night, I woke to water pooling on the floor. My socks soaked. The smell of earth and lake rot thick in the air. I followed the wet footprints down the hallway, through the living room to the door, already open. Outside, the road was dry. But I still heard the water, calling. I drove like a passenger in my own body, headlights cutting through the deep blue dusk, my hands numb on the wheel. The gravel crunched beneath the tires, the woods pressing in closer than before. When I reached the path, the sun had vanished completely, leaving only the bruised glow of early night. I stepped out of the car without thinking, the air colder than it should have been for spring. The locket was back in my pocket. I don't remember putting it there. The willow greeted me like an old friend, or a patient predator. Its branches stretched wider than ever, bending over the dock, dipping into the lake like veins into flesh. The wind was dead still, yet the leaves trembled as if breathing. The dock groaned beneath my feet. And there she was, waiting. The girl in white. Her dress no longer dripping, now dry and thin as paper, clinging to her like burial cloth. Her hair hung still. Her eyes met mine, hollow yet pleading. She stood at the edge of the dock, her back to the water. She was crying again, but not like before. This time it was softer, final, like a goodbye. She looked at me and said, "Come see." Only that. Then she turned, walked to the edge, and stepped into the water. No splash, no sound. She just vanished, the surface swallowing her without a ripple. My legs moved on their own. I walked to the end of the dock, heart racing, breath shallow. I looked down into the water and saw him, the boy from the locket, clearer than ever before. His face tilted up toward me, suspended beneath the glassy surface, as though he were sleeping. His eyes opened, and he looked just like me. Not a resemblance, not similar. Me. And then he smiled. That was when the girl appeared again, beneath the surface beside him. her hand resting gently on his shoulder. The locket slipped from my hand. I didn't drop it. It left me, sank slow and silent into the black. As it vanished, something deep in my chest uncoiled, like a tether snapping. I turned to leave, but the dock was gone. Behind me, the willow now stood where the shoreline had been. Its branches arched over the lake, surrounding me like a cage of roots and bark. Closer than ever. Too close. I stumbled backward, nowhere left to go. I heard a voice. Not hers. A boy's voice. Familiar. Not an echo. Not in my mind. From the trees. It called my name. Nathan. I looked toward the sound, but I already knew. It wasn't me anymore. I stepped to the edge of the dock that no longer floated, staring into the reflection of the person I used to be, and the water opened its arms.